All right, it's time for the second edition of Mock Draft Monday here on Boy Green Daily. If you're new to the show, every Monday after the Jets season, we do Mock Draft Mondays where we talk about Jets draft scenarios, answer Jets draft questions that you can submit, more on that later, and talk about Jets draft scenarios that the Jets could be placed in and give you guys more familiarity with the Jets draft potential prospects and so much more. Of course, I'm sure a lot of us wish we were talking about something else here on a Monday. We'll also talk about that, but let's roll the footage and let's get this party started, baby. Zoinks! It is unequivocally the Super Bowl for New York Jet fans.
Field Yates, baby. Field Gosh darn Yates. Let's bring him on the show. Come on, people. Connor Rogers is joining the show. What's up, Connor? But Trevor Gosh darn Sycamore, baby, for me, personally, my favorite New York Jet of all time.
Wow, it's great to be on. What an intro that was right there.
Paul, nobody does an intro like you, man.
Paul, you give the best intro of literally any podcast that I've ever been.
I'm gonna lose my gosh darn bananas.
What's poppin', everybody? My name's Paul Weston Jr., a.k.a. Boy Green. I'm the New York Jets digital reporter for Heavy.com. Welcome to Boy Green Daily, a daily New York Jets video show for 20-25 minutes and change. Also available wherever you get your podcast, or simply search for Boy Green Daily from that perspective. And Mondays, throughout the entire offseason, we'll be doing Mock Draft Mondays. So, of course, through the NFL draft season, again, answering Jets draft questions, learning more about draft prospects with one of the best in the business, and I will introduce him now, and talking about Jets draft-related scenarios. There is a forum link from Heavy on Jets. It's also going to be available in my YouTube community tab each week, where you guys can click the link and submit questions you want answered on the show, and we will highlight you on the program as we're talking about those. And we have a ton of questions today, so I'm very much looking forward to it. So let's bring in this guy. This guy is one of the best in the business. I'm glad that we partnered up. You guys know him as Dom C, and he is the architect of Project Prospect, the home base and one-stop shop for all you NFL draft junkies out there. And he's about to give us this fix this morning. Let's bring him in. Good morning, Dom C.
Paul, how are you this morning?
I'm doing excellent, Dom. Good. I will be honest. As much as I want to see your handsome face and fancy hair, I'm going to be honest, I wish we were talking playoffs today instead of potential mock draft Mondays. And not everyone agreed with me last night, but I tweeted it out in the middle of the playoff game between the Detroit Lions and the LA Rams. I'm like, man, you know what? How can you not just love these lovable losers in the Detroit Lions who are huddled outside, the nightclub at that one of those burning trash cans? It's, Browns fans, Jets fans, Lions fans. We're all like, one of us will be in that club one of these days. And congrats to the Lions. Yeah, Dom C. Nice hair. There you go, Dakota, with that.
Thank you, Dakota. Thank
stock
you,
up, if I may. Stock up on the Dom C here.
Listen, I'm going gray, but I'm going to have a full dome piece of hair until the day I die, if I trend along the side of my father, my grandfathers, and so on and so forth. But I digress. It's not about my hair.
We appreciate it. We appreciate what you bring to the table. And I'll just say, of course, obviously, I wish I was. I just watched the Lions victory speech in their locker room this morning. Mm-hmm. And, it's inspiring to me because I know the Jets are going to do it. I know they're going to accomplish some of those things. Lions win the division for the first time in 30 years. Jets would win the division if it comes up next year for the first time. And so 2024, 22 years. So, again, it's all going to happen. But, again, I wish we were talking about something different. But I love the draft. Conflicting, but it'll happen. Yeah, it's going to be us next year, as James says on YouTube. There we go, baby. There we go. Love it. All right, everybody. So let's just get right into it. So in future episodes, you're eventually going to see us actually doing mock drafts each, kind of comparing, contrasting from draft expert to random nerd with a long beard will be kind of contrasting notes in the future. But for the first couple of these episodes, we're going to be talking about very specific scenarios that you guys care about, and plus answering your Jets draft questions, because Domsey has all the answers. He has a crystal ball somewhere there in that beautiful office man cave that he has going on. And I will ask you this, because this is the one everyone cares about, the offensive line. A lot of people say it's not going to matter what else they do. Randy Mueller, I mean, former NFL GM, joined me on the show last week, and he said that very thing as we were flirting with Devontae Adams' possibilities and some of these other receivers. He just bluntly laid it on the line. It's not going to matter about any of those kind of players unless you have an offensive line. And a lot of fans agreed with him. So let's get into the offensive line. The Jets have the number 10 overall pick of the first round. Currently, they do not have a second-round pick. We'll see if any future trades potentially changes that conversation. I want to bluntly start here. I'll start with multiple questions. First off, do you believe that the top two offensive tackles in this class are Fashanu and Joe Alt?
I think that Joe Alt is the top tackle, with number 2 being Olu Fashanu. So to answer the question, yes.
Okay. I guess I'll layer this one as well. Is there a big gap in your mind between Joe Alt and Fashanu?
There is. I think Joe Alt has taken the necessary steps. Now, I might be against the norm here, guys. You guys read and follow and Google and all these other, people. I am giving you my opinion and my opinion only. And if you differ from it, that's okay. I think Joe Alt has surpassed, and I think there's a big gap between him and Olu Fashanu. Now, Joe Alt needed to improve. Joe Alt did everything in 23 that he needed to do to step up or take that next level. He's a very, very solid, fundamental tackle. Does everything very well. A finisher, right? It just really improved his run blocking this year. A finisher, borderline mauler, maybe not the biggest in the class, but borderline. Very solid. I love the versatility that he has. He's strong top to bottom, strong hands, good punch, vice grip for hands. Very, very, very high floor, with a good ceiling. The thing with Olu Fashanu, Paul, is that Olu's ceiling probably is a little bit higher, because if everything clicks for him, he's got, he's got athletic prowess that, that probably surpasses Joe Alt's, but I don't know if, I don't like Olu very well in the run game. He is a mediocre to probably less than average right now. NFL, run game. He doesn't finish, stops his legs. Not that physical presence that you would hope to see from a guy that large. Again, very athletic, mirrors very well. I question some of his technique. He, for a young guy, he lets defensive ends get into his body a little bit too much. Doesn't properly use those hands and those punches. And that could be, listen, it didn't really affect him all that much in the Big Ten. There was a couple reps or a couple games that it did, but the NFL is not the Big Ten, buddy. You know what I mean? So there's going to be improvement. That can he improve in those aspects? Absolutely. But for now, to answer the question between the two, I think the gap between Joe Alt and Olu Fashanu is not, like super significant. I'm not talking like 3-round gap, but it's bigger than I think a lot of people expected it to be or believe it to be elsewhere.
Okay.
Yeah.
2-part question.
Shoot.
Who is offensive tackle 3? And is there a big gap between Fashanu and him?
I think listen, I go back and forth. All right. And I'm going to answer the question about offensive tackle 2 ways. Okay. I think there's 2 guys in this next tier. So I don't know.
Please. Yeah. I appreciate that. Yeah.
I don't know if there's, I can't really say top to bottom, if there's a lot of stuff yet to happen, the combine, all the, bowl games and so on and so forth, the Senior Bowl and the Shrine Bowl and stuff like that's happened. So the rankings are going to rank. But I'll give you the next 2 guys I have in my tier are J.C. Latham and Talisi Fuaga, obviously, right? Yeah. Those are names that everyone thinks about. Gun to my head right now, Paul, if I had to label one as tackle 3, I'd probably lean Latham. And the reason why I say that, and a lot of Jets fans aren't going to like to hear this. Fuaga is a great prospect.
Okay.
I think Fuaga actually might be a really, really dominant guard. I think there's going to be teams that see him as a guard. I think he can play tackle. I think he's not his play skill wise. I'm not, and this isn't a pro comp, but his flexibility and versatility wise, I liken him very much to an AVT, right? AVT was a tackle. We know he can be a really good guard. Some of us, me included, I don't know how you feel, Paul, think AVT can hang just fine at the tackle.
Yes.
But a lot of people think, no, he's a guard, put him at guard. I think they're going to have the same sentiment with Taliese Fuaga. It absolutely mauler in the run game. Not the great, like I question what actually both of the guys, I should say, in fairness, like I'm concerned about both of the guys, what they're going to do in regards to, speed from the wide nine, those speed rushers that we saw blow by Mekhi Becton, time after time this year. I think those are the guys at the NFL that are going to affect both of these tackles. The difference between J.C. Latham and Taliese Fuaga is I think J.C. Latham is a pure tackle. I think Taliese Fuaga is a tackle. He's probably a guard at the NFL that can play tackle. I think J.C. Latham is pure tackle. On top of that, I think J.C. Latham has enough athleticism for a big guy, 355, 360 pounds, that he can eventually move to the left side. I think that's very important for this draft cycle for the Jets, considering that right now we don't know who the left tackle is going to be. You hope that you get something from free agency. That's going to happen before the draft, so a lot of this stuff can change. But yeah, I think that J.C. Latham and Taliese Fuaga are both in the equation for the next tier of tackles, and then the third tier after that, I'll just give you a name because I think it's a little bit further down, is Armarius Mims from Georgia.
Okay.
Big bulking right tackle, young, as athletic as a player as in this draft, but very, very green. I think he only had 800 snaps in college, 20 years old, just came out. So Latham is the guy that I'm kind of honing in for the Jets if we stick at 10, and the other two tackles are off the table.
All right. So first off, AVT coming. Yeah. So what's my take? I want conviction. That's where I want. Has it been cool that he's that one high school basketball player that apparently can play every position? Sure. Check it off the bucket list, pal. Very nice. But for me, I want conviction, and the Jets told us we will have conviction by them saying, okay, insert position. Maybe we'll wait a little bit in the offseason, of course, because it's not like they're going to be doing, positional workouts and things of that nature till probably third week of April. So they have obviously time to then ultimately tell AVT where he's going to be playing. Hell, he's been told within a game week what position he's going to play. So I'm sure you appreciate a few months heads up, which is ultimately what he's going to get. I think it'll depend on what pieces the Jets are able to collect on the offensive line. And they're like, all right, where can we best use this guy? Okay, tackle. You're a tackle for the rest of time. Okay, You're a guard. So that's where I want. I want conviction from that standpoint. You pick a position and just rock with him there, and let's see. I think he's got again, look at the limited snaps at tackle, whether it's left or right, and everything speaks for itself. And then the stuff at guard speaks for itself. So he's shown propensity at both. My early lean is it's easier to find guards and tackles. So you throw AVT at tackle to fill one of the two big-ass voids with Dwayne Brown and Mekhi Becton leaving in free agency. Anywho, putting that aside, Dom C, let me make sure I clarify this appropriately. Do you believe there is Tier 1 and Fashanu and Alt are both in it, or are they separate tiers? Tier 1 Alt, Tier 2 Fashanu, and then we start laying it down to everything else you just said. Which of those two?
I would probably put them both as Tier 1. I mean, I think they're both good players. Okay. I just think the gap between them for me is bigger than most.
Okay, so let me bring this up because I assume that you think no, I won't assume anything. That you know what they say about people assumes asses and yous and me's in there. So let me put it this way: over the last week, Dom C, and we'll also do some of this in the future. I find this fun. There were two mock drafts that came out from very notable people. Jordan Reed of ESPN, good friend of the program. We've had him on before. I love Jordan. He had Olu Fashanu to the New York Jets with the 10th overall pick. He had him falling into the Jets' laps. Todd McShay, Todd, who I love a lot. He's in a new BDM now. It's going to be, I will just say, all the love in the world to Todd. One of the reasons I was able to fall in love with this draft was a crazy Mel and Todd back and forth for a long time. So it hurts me that that's no longer going to happen. So I'm looking forward to the future. Again, Jordan Reed and everybody else that's there. So shout out to them. But that hurts me a little bit. But in Todd's mock draft, he had Joe Alt falling to the New York Jets at 10th overall. So I now throw it to our, live correspondent. All right, let's go to Dom C, who's live at the field. Dom, is that possible? If you had to put a percentage chance on one of either of those two, somehow, some way falling to the Jets by the time we get to April, and a lot can happen, as you mentioned. There's Senior Bowl. We'll have some live shows with Dom C from the Senior Bowl. That'll be great. The Combine. Pro days, everything, and all the other wildness as we've seen in other years that beyond those events, which can affect draft stock. But with all that being said, what were the chances right now in this moment of either of those two being available in the Jets pick? And to clarify, these are guys that are in quote unquote tier 1 for Dom C. Go ahead.
Yeah. I think that the percentage that Joe Alt is available at 10, I mean, barring something tragic or drastic happening, it's probably 0.005. Very small percent. I think
so. It's very small unless I send out a bong video in the middle of the draft.
If you find one with a strap-on face mask bong video, there's a chance.
Ooh, okay.
Now Fashanu, I think there's a real chance. I if I had to put a percentage on it, I don't know. I think we're closer to 40 or 50% chance. There's an avenue that happens, right? And what would have to happen is there would have to be obviously 3 quarterbacks that go before. So we're talking 9 picks.
Very possible.
We're talking Alt, right? We know. I think Alt's going to go. You got 3 quarterbacks, so that's at 4.
Yep.
You have Marvin Harrison. You have
Neighbors.
Okay. And Rome Odunze. That puts you at 7. Right. Okay. So what you need for what I think for Fashanu to happen is one of 2 things. One, you need somebody to, take a bite of the apple at the tight end position on Brock Bowers, which I think Brock Bowers is clear top 10 talent. I think I have him as the 2nd rated player overall in this class.
Wow.
Yeah. And then after that,
Jared Verse.
One of the I was going to say either Rome Odunze or one of the defenders, and it's whatever defenders of your choice. Okay. It's known to be a very strong top-heavy offensive draft, but at some point somebody's going to come up for some of these defenders. Now, whether Jared Verse is of your liking, or a guy like Liatu Latu, or one of the cornerbacks may be a little bit rich, but you get what I'm saying. One of either Rome Odunze is going to have to work himself up into the top 9, or one of these defenders, and Olu Fashanu could fall.
Okay,
there's a path to have that happen.
I agree as well. Again, it's not the same thing, but in the AVT draft, I kept talking to draft experts leading up because that's a player I liked. I'm sure a player a lot of Jet fans liked, and I'm like, can they get to 23, where the Jets were picking at the time? Yeah. And then most of them said no, but I had one guy who said, I can see it. I'm like, do tell. Yes. And then we were trying to plot the way of how to get it much deeper than before. And then he said, or if he gets within insert range, you can trade up. And he fell within the exact range that this draft individual told me, and the Jets traded up and got him. And I was just the happiest man of all time. So that one was fun. All right, so here's what we're going to do now.
Yes, sir.
We're going to go to the draft questions. Again, there's a form link for all of these episodes where you guys, for an entire week, I already have next week's link already available, so you guys can start submitting questions for that one for next week as soon as this show is over. It's let's go right through. So I'm just going to put it up on the screen, and we'll go through a couple of these questions, because some of them we addressed last week, but let's go through some of these here. All right. This one's from Jacob Finnegan. If both offensive tackles are gone, we talked about the potential of both Alt and Fashanu being off the board. Is trading back into late first to get a couple of 2s? That was the question. Is that on the table for you? And I want to add something else to this, because I saw this as another question, so I'll try to merge these together.
Okay.
The theme of trading back because in theory, 10, which where the Jets are picking, you have better chance at talent at 10 than you do at 25 or something if you trade back. In theory, right? Because again, only 9 players went before you, so you have the world's pickings after that as far as that's concerned. If you trade back, you don't. If the Jets are in an all-in year, don't they want the best possible talent? And I'm just trying to play a little devil's advocate here as part of the question, that don't you want the best possible talent to help you in your pursuit to go get the chip? Or is it better, even in this all-in year, to trade back at multiple lottery tickets and you trust the draft and scouting process, say, hey, we might not get a guy as great as what we would at 10, but multiple guys that are good are still better for the exam. So kind of work that in as well to the question.
Sure. So here's my thought process on it.
Okay.
It really depends on, again, it's so hard to kind of talk this up without knowing what happens in free agency. Okay. But just say this tackle is the number one, tackle is the number one target for the Jets. I don't know if it's going to be, I'm assuming it's going to be, but Joe Douglas and his draft team, no one had Will McDonald on the bingo card last year. So, so if their guy is, listen, and again, this is just my overview of the tackle class. I think it's good. I think it falls off precipitously come, the second, third round. I think there's like 10 or 11 tackles that I like. After that, it's but I think that there's Joe Alt. I think he's the premier tackle in the class, and then the rest of them all have, the rest of them are not perfect prospects, including Olu Fashanu, right? So you pick your poison, right? Say, all right, you miss out on Alt, and then they say, okay, and I'm making this up, guys. Say we have Olu Fashanu and Latham and Fuaga and Mims and Patrick Paul and Jordan Morgan all bunched together in the same. Then to me, if they have them kind of graded out the same, to me, that would ding, 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 you trade back, right? Okay. Because you can pick up more assets. Again, in a strong draft, 2024 draft cycle is going to produce, it's a deep class at a lot of positions, a little thinner at others, but overall it's a very, considered a very good draft class. So in that sense, I would drop back in the first round, pick up some more capital to help your pursuit of this all-in thing, right? Because if you have a grade on the guy that you're going to take at 10 and you can get him at 20, and pick 50 while you're at it, well, to me, that's a no-brainer. Okay. Now, the fact of the matter is Joe Douglas has yet to trade back in round 1. He's traded up. He has yet to trade back. So I don't know if that's, again, I'm not in the, I'm not in the scouting room with Joe Douglas and his team, so I don't know what the rationale is. But to me, to answer that question is, yes, if there's a guy that fits in your, that you have graded that fits your need, and you have guys that 4 or 5 of them in that same level, yes, I would trade back to answer Jacob Finnegan's question. Absolutely. And acquire more capital. Do I think Joe Douglas will do that? He hasn't done it yet. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm a big history trends guy, and if it has not happened, it doesn't mean, again, you flip a coin 10 times around, it lands on heads. The 11th time person go, probably heads, but no, it's 50-50. I don't know. It hasn't happened yet, so I'm leaning towards what has happened, but shoot, anything could possibly transpire there. There's another trade back question here. It's from our good buddy, Gunny Gumby, NY Jets Situation Report.
Gunny.
I love Gunny, and I'm going to alter it slightly and just say, he also asked about a trade back scenario. Dempsey, is there a player in particular that you would target as a trade back? And let me set it up this way. At the 10th overall pick, you draft insert player, and some people are like, oh boy, seems a little bit like a reach. Maybe a guy you like, but if you trade back, it'd be a more appropriate value. To your point, maybe you could get some picks with it. Some people would say, well, McDonald's that guy, but I'm neither here nor there on that conversation. But Dempsey, who would that player be on your, again, we're talking about your insights here as far as the draft is concerned. Is there a guy that'd be too rich at 10, but you like for the Jets if they traded back somewhere in the draft, late teens, 20s, perhaps?
Yeah. Well, probably 2 guys at 2 different positions.
Okay.
The first I'd probably say, and one of my favorite interior line prospects in this entire class is Graham Barton from Duke. Graham Barton came into Duke, was recruited and started as a center as a freshman. He played right guard and right tackle as a sophomore before moving to left tackle as a junior and a senior, and he's been dominant. Just he's got the total package. He's got the height, he's got the length. He plays again versatile enough that he can play all 5 of the positions literally. But it's one of those things that he's probably going to stay inside either at a guard or center because of the length. The length issue on the arms. But plays with his head on the swivel. Very, very high football IQ. Communicates well. There's very few games, and I've tweeted about this in the past. Tweeted about him in the past. There's very few games where I watched him and I was like, ooh, there's very few reps. I had some of the cleanest grades for Graham Barton through that. Now, I personally wouldn't draft a guard up that high. That's just me. This is dumb. I wouldn't draft a guard up at 10. Do I think he has I absolutely have a first round grade on Graham Barton, and he would be a guy I would target. Now, if I took a guy like Graham Barton, it would come with the understanding of either I secured my tackles in free agency, or AVT, you're going to be my right tackle, and Graham Barton's, I'm going to slide him in at center or guard and play that position with Pittman. And I think he's a perfect, he's agile, he's athletic, he's a perfect scheme fit for what we do in the inside and outside zone. The second guy, this might be a little bit rich, but a guy I really like, there's probably 2. Is Troy Franklin out of Oregon. He's a wide receiver, 6'2", 185 pounds. He's a route runner, and he's fast as could be. He's a guy, he's not as nuanced as a route runner as Garrett Wilson is now, but he's in that mold. Had some drop issues in college. That's definitely something that I think would like to. But if I'm going to gear towards the wide receivers, he would be a guy. Another guy that I also like is A.D. Mitchell. I think A.D. Mitchell has a chance to be a very, very special athlete. Not guys I would take at 10, but guys I would consider later in the first round. Hell, you might even be able to sneak into the second round and grab one of those guys maybe. But those 2 guys are wide receivers that I like. I see somebody talking about Brian Thomas in the in the chat. Also really good. I mean, Brian Thomas, 6'4", 200-something pounds. I think he's more of a, in the mold of Mike Williams from the Chargers, big body, but a go guy, an outside vertical speed. That kind of, is where I put Brian Thomas. I think the other 2 guys that I talked about, A.D. Mitchell and Troy Franklin, are much more versatile offensive weapons, can help, Troy Franklin, especially, I think, what he can do, on these and A.D. Mitchell on those in-breaking cuts and something like that. Those comebackers, they can sink their hips and drop and so on and so forth. They're a little bit more nuanced route runners than Brian Thomas. But to answer your question in a long way, Graham Barton, and Troy Franklin.
Okay. And guys, there are 2 ways to submit questions for the show. If you want to get them answered on the show, that's that forum link I talked about, and more on that later. I'll tell you guys how you can start doing it already for next week while you have the thoughts on your head, so you can submit those. And the other way is a YouTube super chat live on the show. We'll get those in. And you mentioned Dom C. Joe Douglas has never traded down in round 1. So, your eyebrows kind of up. Would he ever do it? Well, one thing I know he's done is trade up in round 1, as Phil sends in this YouTube super chat, baby. Think about it. Elijah Vera Tucker, trade up. Jermaine Johnson, trade up. He's done it several times, and we're talking about all kinds of rounds where he's been able to do it before. So Phil asks the $1 billion question. We are a win now team, as everyone says. Any chance we trade up for Joel? So, okay, maybe 10 is too unrealistic. Perhaps, I don't know. I think there's a lot of time left, but perhaps it's too unrealistic. And he starts falling in a range. Because if you think about it, number 1 overall pick, probably quarterback. Number 2 overall pick, probably quarterback. Patriots could get Froggy. Number 3 overall pick, quarterback. Whoa, all of a sudden, you start doing the draft value chart. You put that aside to the pick, and you start saying, because you call ahead of time, we've seen this before. I've talked to a few former general managers, and they say they work out those deals ahead of time. How much would it cost for 4? How much would it cost for 5? How much would it cost for 6? And you put all those together near your board, and then you have them with all the players you like, and you're like, ooh, wait a second. Right here is where there's a drop-off in trade price. there is where we could go and get our guy if he falls to this level, and you could work out those deals ahead of time with other teams. If our guy's there, we'll trade it right there for that pick. So I ask you this, the Phil Super Chat coming in, love it. Any chance we trade up for Joel in a win now with how much you believe that he is tier 1, tackle 1, number 1? Would you be willing to do it?
Would I be willing to? Yes. Do I think it's feasible or realistic? No.
Yeah, no second round pick this year.
I mean, just lack of capital. 6 picks, I think, if I'm not mistaken. You could be wrong, 5 or 6.
Yeah,
I know we got 2 4s, and I think we got 2 6s, no 5th, right?
Yeah, I think you're right. On that. Go ahead.
But I digress. You really want me to kind of stick the knife in and twist it a little bit? If we had just lost to New England, we'd be at the 6th pick, which is perfect territory for Joe. We wouldn't have to trade.
How dare you?
I didn't. I just figured I'd kind of throw that in. However, no. You know what? Listen, I would love it. I don't think it's realistic. I don't see any other ways or means to do it without just either dipping into next year's draft capital or completely being void of any capital this year. So.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I am confirming it. So we have a first round pick. We have a third round pick. It looks like we have what is that?
2 4ths?
2 4ths. Yeah, it does. Yeah, because the 4th just traveled, I see. But yeah, so we have 2 4ths.
That's the Jacob Martin 4th round pick.
Correct. Yes, that's right. That was part of. Yeah, that was a little confusing. And then the 6th round pick as well. So okay, yes. Yeah, we have a pile of picks.
And I think if I'm not mistaken, when they assign compensatories, we're kind of probably. I think we'll get 2 more 6th.
Yeah, who is that? Who are
Nate Herbig,
yes,
and Sheldon Rankins, maybe.
Oh, I think you're right. Yeah, I did like a little formula, and I tried to do again. It's an impossible task, I guess, to try to like math and these numbers. Is that pick? And then it's there. They don't like. We have some, wonderful sites like Over the Cap and Spot Track who have given us their interpretation of what they believe is the formula, but still, it gets a little muddy there. But nonetheless, yeah, we'll see. Some comp picks could help add some of those, and maybe. But Joe all trade up potentially. All right, this one's from Peter, who asked it on Twitter through our forum link. Which left tackles? I will ask this, not which. I don't want you to give me names from that perspective. Although if you want to, you can. How many left tackles in this draft are realistic day 1 starters? And if you want, you could combine right tackles, but if that's too complicated of an answer, you could just give it to me on left tackles.
No, I'll give it to you on all all tackles. Realistic, like, are we talking like plug and play, no question?
Yeah, that's what I would say. Because, like, for instance, would you have on your bingo card that Max Mitchell was a day 1 rookie starter as an offensive tackle?
No.
Probably not, but that's what he was. So I don't think, like, a series of unfortunate events, some cruel kid has a voodoo doll of the Jets offensive line in his house and had a little funky time on himself. I think just if you draft this guy, you're like, oh yeah, he's a starter. So like basically where that line ends, how many of those names?
Probably 4
at left tackle.
No, at tackle.
Tackle overall.
Yes.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah,
okay.
and that's with an asterisk because that's like I said. I think that Talisi Fuaga is a starter without a doubt.
Oh, I see.
I don't know if it's tackle or guard.
Okay, I understand.
But I think the other. I think Fuaga and obviously Alt and Fashanu I think will be starters, and I think J.C. Latham and Fuaga will be starters as well. And all of them guys are going to come with. Some speed bumps, some little bumps in the road. I don't think there's a perfect prospect at the offensive line in this class. I actually think probably the cleanest prospect is the guy I talked about earlier, the guard Graham Barton from Duke. Mm-hmm. But I digress. Okay. So for the tackles in the first round, I think those are the guys that will come in as starters. Could some if there's some other later round guys, could they challenge for positions and earn one in camp? Absolutely. There's talented guys like we talked about, Armarius Mims, Jordan Morgan from Arizona, still on the fence of whether I think he'll stay outside at left tackle or move into left guard. Some guys really like the athleticism of Tyler Guyton and Patrick Ball from Houston. So could one of those guys ultimately earn a job come after training camp? Absolutely. But I think the four that I named are probably the four guys that are going to come in and be drafted and realistically expect to play right away.
All right, another draft question here. This is from Scott on Twitter through our forum. Asked, would like to know more about the slot receiver options, third round or below. He says, I don't think Xavier Gipson is the answer next season. An interesting side note on that Xavier Gipson, undrafted free agent, Jason Brownlee, undrafted free agent. Great stories on Hard Knocks. Really interesting. I thought X in particular, he got more ops, but especially with the return game factored in as well. They showed some chutzpah. I don't think I feel comfortable with him as wide receiver 3 or 4. Maybe he is that fifth rotational gadget guy that you could bring in and be the return man. So not a bad find, of course, as an undrafted free agent, but I do think the Jets really need to fill out the room this offseason. Just my commentary on the question as well. So yeah, slot receiver options. Is there anyone you like after round 3?
There's tons of them.
Okay.
There's a bunch of there's guys that fit that role, kind of blend very well. The primarily slot, and that's what I'll say is primarily slot. And from third round around, I mean, two of the guys that come up to right off the bat, Jacob Cowan from Arizona. He's going to be a true slot receiver, for sure. Very reminiscent. I watched his film and what I loved about him at Arizona is he demanded the ball, even at smaller in stature, 5'11", 185 pounds. But he was the de facto first option in that offense in the passing game. He demanded the ball. His game film reminds me very much of Josh Downs, who was a third round pick last year. Just a true slot guy, but does more than that. A dominating slot guy. He at 5'11", he's fast, yards after the catch, all that stuff. Very good route runner, very good hands. I think he had 8 or 9 touchdowns last year at Arizona. He's a guy I really love. I'm higher on Cowan than most. And another guy that I really like is Ricky Pearsall. From Florida. Third, fourth round is going to be kind of that comfort zone where he falls. But I think he's another guy who's it's a little bit bigger of a slot, and he's a guy that might be able to do some stuff outside. Not like that pure X build, but more so that Z receiver who's moving all over the formation, or a flanker if you are old like me. We used to call them flankers. A guy who's a very nuanced route runner. Probably the single best catch of 2024. If you guys haven't, go Google it. I think it plays playing Charlotte. Ricky Pearsall versus Charlotte. Amazing catch. Just a really, really good player. Not gonna check all the boxes. Not the most athletic guy, but we just watched Puka Nacua destroy the NFL last year, and he had those same exact kind of sentiments in my draft, in my draft notes. Looks like a guy who's going to play in the NFL, but not the most athletic, not going to wow you with anything, just kind of a player. And boy, was I wrong, because he wowed me.
Yeah.
But I think that's kind of the mold that Ricky Pearsall's in. I mean, he might be a little bit faster, straight line fast. But he gets in and out of his breaks very well. Like I said, settles, sinks those hips at the top of the stem, can run a full route tree. I just think that he's probably best suited, and I think he only had like a 2% drop rate in all of college. So he's a guy that I really like in that range.
Okay, I like it. And again, I think a valuable lesson learned by Jet fans over the weekend is how important it will be for Joe Douglas to hit on some of these mid-round wide receivers. I saw that very popular last night with all the success. Amon-Ra, mid-round. Puka Nacua and all these other guys, like, man, the Jets are like, we'd like one of those, please. By the way, guys, I just dropped it in our YouTube comment section. Next week's mailbag link is live. Submit your questions, scenarios, prospects, Jets related, or just in general, draft related. Feel free to do that. It's right there. While it's on your mind, get it out. Just click that link. You have to log in with your Facebook or Google account. Very easy. Take seconds, and booyah, you could submit your questions on the show to guarantee get answered for next week. So get it while it's hot, people. I'll make sure I pin that to the YouTube comments here shortly, but you can also just scroll and find it. That is Paul Boy Green there. All right, Dom C, I'm going to keep going with questions, but when you're ready to tap out, slam the table, and hopefully the referee sees it or doesn't make it up, like the Canadian screw job, the Montreal screw job that happened so many years ago.
I'm good until about quarter after.
Okay.
So
quarter
we got a
after.
few more minutes. Six, 7 more minutes, no problem.
Okay. Yep. All right. Here we go. We'll try to go rapid fire here. Wild Wave. Would it be wise for the Jets to take an extremely raw prospect in Fashanu, who seems like he's 2 years away with his development in a win now mode? And additionally, do you trust the Jet staff, cough, Keith Carter, to develop him to be that guy for the next decade? Thoughts?
Two-part.
Yep.
Yes, I'd be fine with Olu Fashanu. Again, don't think he's the perfect prospect, but listen, beggars can't be choosers, right? Beggars can't be choosers. The second part is a more interesting one because I do question the kind of development that, and it's not, this isn't a dig at Keith Carter, he's gotten enough, but our entire offensive, it shows that it shows our staff, and this is my opinion, Paul, you can tell me how you think.
Yeah.
For somehow we're able to take these guys on the defensive side of the ball that were undrafted free agents and develop them into something of value, something of worth, good NFL players. Heck, even first team all pros, right?
That's right.
And we can't do that on the offensive side. So not a dig directly at Keith Carter, but doesn't help the situation. So yeah, I think any guy that's coming into our offensive system is going to really, it has shown, if history repeats itself, it's going to show some tough sledding on the development end.
All right, this is from another one of our favorite content creators. He sent it directly on the forum link, which, by the way, you guys can do right now for next week. It is Talking Jets with Tigo. He said, I think if you think, I love when we start with questions like that. I think if you think the offensive line is the most important position, this is Talking with Tigo talk, I'm just reading his question, that needs to be filled this offseason, then I think you should want Fuaga. I feel like outside of Alt, he's the most probity offensive tackle in this class. He comes in and plays right tackle year one, giving you the ability to put AVT at left tackle and help to fix the offensive line. He has a bunch of other jazz here, but we have a limited amount of time. So do you agree or disagree with that?
Listen, I gave you my thoughts on Fuaga. Like I said, I think he's a phenomenal player. And I think I think he can hang at tackle. I think he could ultimately, I think his highest ceiling in the NFL is going to be a guard. Whether that's with us, listen, if you took Talisi Fuaga and you said, all right, Talisi, meet Elijah, meet Talisi, rock, paper, scissors. One of you guys is right guard. One of you guys is right tackle. Figure it out amongst yourself. I'm fine with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that I'd be completely fine with a guy like Talisi Fuaga. I think he has some limitations, but I think like I said, I've said this 3 times now. I think in this class, I think there's limitations or there's questions with this entire draft class at tackle outside really of Joe Alt.
Interesting. And I don't know if we brought it up on this show, but I'll just use it to end the show here. That the Kansas City Chiefs were able to flip an offensive line in a singular year. They got pistol whipped in the Super Bowl against the Bucs, and then they signed Orlando Brown. They signed Joe Thuney, and they drafted some guy named Trey Smith and Creed Humphrey. Booyah, wave the magic wand. They were able to flip their fortunes on the offensive line. Now, it takes a lot of luck and brilliance and every combination of things to be able to use all the different avenues, free agency and draft that are possible, plus there's trade options that the Jets have explored in the past. So it is possible to flip an offensive line from, being in the doldrums in the gutter to potentially being on the other side of the river. I don't know how much on the other side of the river we needed to be with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback, but the more in that direction we could go, the better for the Jets' fortunes. And the last question here is, I guess, simply this. It's which non-first-round interior offensive line guys do you like? Because I'm assuming this person, Daniel, on Twitter asked through our forum, he's saying he assumes that AVT will play right tackle and will sign a left tackle in free agency, making the guard the last piece to fill.
Yeah. Listen, there's 2 guys. I'll give you a guard and a center before we take off, and then we can delve into those guys in depth, in future weeks.
Of course.
Christian Haynes from UConn. He's a guy that he's actually my second rated interior offensive lineman in my top 20 overall. I think he's an absolute dominant dominant blocker. 6'2", 315 pounds, mover of people. Mover of people. I like that for my interior guys. I don't want no pity pats. I want you to just move people out of the way, and I think that's exactly what Christian Haynes can do. Strong from core to hips. So he can, bury down and plant an anchor against those bull rush. He's a guy that I would absolutely consider figuring out a way to trade up. It's just say we stay at 10 and we don't have a second round. He's a guy I want to trade up into the second round for. That would be my target. Probably unrealistic, but that would be my target. The other guy that I really like in this draft class, he's a center. His name's Zach Frazier from West Virginia. Definitely a guy, probably, third, fourth round talent. More talented than that, but suffered an injury at the end of last year. So I think the medicals are going to really, I think it was a broken leg, if I'm not mistaken, tibia, fibia, something like that. So those medicals are going to come into play. But just an absolute, just a pure center. You talked about the kid from, from Oklahoma that Kansas City drafted in that draft with Trey Smith. Reminds me
Creed Humphrey.
Yeah. Creed Humphrey reminds me very much, placed stylistically, of Creed Humphrey. Again, this is something that I talked about it last night with somebody. I forgot who. To me, there's certain traits that football players have from, outside of football that just work very well in the football game. Zach Frazier has it. Zach Frazier was a decorated all-state wrestler for 4 years. So he understands balance. He has strong grip. He just understands angles and leverage and stuff like that. Stuff that you need as a wrestler. Zach Frazier's had it. He's a guy that I think, you can take a stab at him with one of those fourth round picks and then figure out which one's going to play center and which one's going to play guard between him and Tippmann. So to answer that question, that's how I would answer it.
Okay. All right. Well, first off, thanks for all your draft insights. I feel like I'm getting smarter, which is easier said than done. I'm not bringing a lot of knowledge to the game, so any additional that could be put in my pot, I appreciate.
Yeah.
And obviously, before we get you out of here, you gotta keep getting better at this. We need your shameless plugging for Project Prospect for all us NFL draft junkies out there. Go ahead, scream it to the rooftops.
Project Prospect puts out we put out content every week. I have a podcast on there called The Draft Dodgers. Right now, every week, probably at minimum 2 videos are going out a week. One, some type of mock draft that goes through all 32 teams, or sometimes 2 round if we're feeling frisky. And then, right now we are going through positional breakdowns. I'm actually getting ready to just finish it editing last night. If you guys want to find out more about the interior offensive line in this class, check out our next episode of Project Prospect, which will be probably put out there either today or debut tomorrow morning. So Project Prospect on YouTube, The Draft Dodgers, and that's it.
All right, beautiful. Well, shout out to everyone who listened to us live. Shout out to the people that listen to us after the fact. And either way, I am dropping it on our YouTube community channel in minutes, the link for next week's episode. If you want to get in on the fun, we'll also start putting the questions on the screen so you guys can see them as we're talking. Also, start doing that for next week as well. You want to submit them. You want to get involved. You want to get engaged with Dom C and myself. We'd really appreciate the support for the show. So again, that will be in the YouTube community chat in minutes if you're listening live. And if you're listening after the fact, it's already there. Boy Green 25 on YouTube, and just go to the community tab. You can click that link and submit your Jets draft questions, takes, or scenarios for next week's episode. Dom C, thanks, brother, and we'll see you next week.
Yes, sir, we will. Thank you, Paul.
All right, thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time. Take care.